Hey, Jason from Worship Artistry here, and in this video, we're going to be talking about tracks. So if for some reason you don't know what a track even is, if you think back to the 80s, people would stand on stage at your church awkwardly singing with a microphone. The instrumental would play in the background.
Well, the devil's in the phone booth.
It's kind of like that, only much cooler. Essentially, you get to choose which part of the song get played. If you only have a piano player and you want to have all those fancy keyboard pads, well, you can run the track and everybody can play along with that. Same thing for guitars, bass, drums, violins, choirs, trombones, anything that is on the record, you can play along with. So before we even talk about what you need to have in place, kind of the pros and cons, what you really need to ask yourself is
Why?
why? There's some really good reasons, and there's some really not so great reasons. Tracks are essentially a tool, and any tool in the right hands for the right job is really helpful. If I need to cut a piece of wood, I'm going to need a saw. But if I'm trying to build a car engine, I probably don't need a saw. That's probably not a great example. Maybe you do need a saw. Point being, it's important to ask those questions. Now, there's a number of things that you need to have in place to really thrive with tracks. First off, you need a computer or a device that can actually run the software to run the tracks. And then you need the software itself. I love Loop Community's Prime app. It's totally free and gives you a lot of flexibility. Then you need the tracks themselves. Once again, Loop Community offers both master tracks from albums as well as community tracks. Worship Artistry has actually started offering the stems from our tutorials at Loop Community, so, we're friends. You also need to have in-ear monitors, because in order to play with a track, you also need to be able to play with a click. And nobody in your congregation wants to hear bridge, 2, 3. Now, let's say you have the ability, the money, to get all that in place. Let's talk about what tracks can do for you. Tracks can spark creativity. Anything that gives you ideas or helps inspire your play is a win in my book. Maybe it's just a string pad that really makes the song section pop. These little parts can really make that musical part of you really come alive, which is important for worship leaders. Tracks can build confidence. A simple drum loop might help your drummer sit more in the pocket. A little pad in the background might make your electric player not feel so naked. And some background vocals to fill out the sound might be exactly what your team needs. Tracks can also set a standard for your band. When you have a track running, your band needs to be able to play along, which means they need to have practiced with the click. They need to know their parts. It might be really uncomfortable for them to start, but if you shepherd them through the process, it can really improve their playing. Now let's talk about the cons. It can be very easy to go overboard quickly. With so much at your disposal, you really need to make wise decisions about what you're going to choose to use. A lot of worship songs are recorded in arenas, and so they need a lot of things to fill out that space. If you've got a 50-person church, arena rock doesn't really make a lot of sense. More tech also equals more problems. If you become too reliant on the track rather than the ability of yourself and your players, something goes wrong with that track, you're kind of out of luck. Reason number 3. If you're not careful, tracks can kind of send the message that you don't need the people. Sometimes when a sound is so full, people don't feel like they're needed. If you have to decide between people and tracks, choose people every time. Tracks can also be pretty expensive. Even if you have all the equipment in place and the free app, you still have to pay for the tracks. They can quickly add a $100 price tag to a single Sunday. I mean, for $100, you could train your team for half a year on Worship Artistry. Just saying. Which brings me to my last point. Tracks are a great way to augment your sound. But a lot of people look at tracks as a solution to a much more important issue. Players who don't feel confident playing. If I can trust my keyboardist, well, I don't need a track running in the background. So before you invest in a whole new sound system, hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars in tracks, hit that like and subscribe button. And if you want, you can try out Worship Artistry for free with the link in the description. Thanks for watching. If you're tired of searching the whole internet to look for a decent tutorial, check out worshipartistry.com. We've got over 600 licensed, cohesive song lessons for your whole team. Link is in the description.